Hi everyone and welcome back to Liz Sews. If you're just joining me, the month of July is going to be swim month, so I have a lot of swimsuits planned. So the one that I thought that I would tackle today is this beauty right here. So I have this image that I had saved on Pinterest and I really loved it, and so I kind of want to make a swimsuit today inspired by this. So the things that really spoke to me about this swimsuit are obviously the color, which is just this lovely shade of mint. And I love this plunging deep neckline with the halter neck closure in the back. So I'm not sure if I can pull off this neckline, but I really want to make a swimsuit that comes close to this. So obviously I already have the fabric chosen and it's almost a perfect match. This fabric I purchased from Spandex World. I believe it's a matte milliskin, but I'll link it down in the description box below, and this is their light mint colorway, which I thought was a pretty good match. And then for the pattern on this guy, For the pattern on this guy, I chose the coral pattern from Bikini Design Club because I thought it gave me a lot of those aspects. So the way that Sarah has designed this pattern, you have a lot of different options for how it closes. The way it's drawn here has extra long straps that then can cross along the back and then tie in the front, but you could also do it with a halter back, which is what I'm going to do to get me closer to my inspiration design. So I'm going to use, I think, probably a gold clasp in the back of the neck there to make it a little bit easier to get on and off with the halter neck. And in looking at this design, I watched the video of her make it. If you guys are unfamiliar with Bikini Design Club, she doesn't actually have any written instructions with her pattern. They're all done on video, and you can watch them on our YouTube channel. So I will say I've made a couple of Bikini Design Club patterns in the past, and I find that the bottoms are quite cheeky. So the pattern designer is really beautiful and she pulls them off and they look amazing on her, but I just do not have the confidence for the cheeky sort of bottoms. So as I said, I watched the video of her making the suit, and I think it should be fairly easy for me to just swap out the bottom of this for the swimsuit bottoms that I made off of my personal block. That way I know that it's going to fit really well and that it's got the right sort of coverage that I like, and I don't have to worry about maybe this showing a little bit too much in the back, more than I want to show. So today I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to switch out the bottoms for my personal draft, but then I'm going to go ahead and still use the pattern for the top because I think it gets me really close to that sort of like plunging neckline, halter neck of the inspiration suit. So first steps first, cutting out all of the fabric. So I have the pattern top. I've cut it out twice in mirror images in both my fashion fabric as well as a lining. And then I've cut out my personal draft bottoms, again in fashion fabric and lining. So this is the same swimsuit bottom that I used in my swimsuit tutorial last year of like converting the Black Beauty bra into a swimsuit. The only difference is I added some extra seam allowances along the legs, and I added my 1/4 inch seam allowance along the waistline because that one I had originally drafted for bound edges, so they didn't have any extra seam allowance. So I added seam allowances waist and the legs holes so that it would work in this design. So the bottoms and the tops are cut out, and then for the straps, I just cut out 2 lengths of fabric. These are 4 inches by 10 inches. This should be more than enough to get me around to the back of my neck, and I can always cut off the excess later once I try it on and figure out how long it needs to be with the clasp. So with all the fabric cut out, I'm going to start pinning things into place. Okay, so I'm going to start with the bottoms, and I'm trying to figure out what's the right side of this fabric and what's the wrong side. So I think like that. So what I'm going to do is pin this together. I went with right sides together on my front and back fashion. I'm going to pin those along the 2 sides here. So my first inclination is to go ahead and do stitch and flip where I sew in the lining along these side seams as well, but I don't think that's going to work for this particular method because the top of the suit has to be sandwiched in between the lining. So I'm going to go ahead and pin the lining separately so I have the bottoms done in the fashion fabric and the lining. The next thing that I want to do is pin all of my darts into place. So these do have a nice dart on them, which will give some better shaping. Again, making sure that I have the right side of the fabric towards the inside. So you want to pin this with right sides together. And again, I'm going to do this for both the suit and the lining material. So this is going to be a curved dart, so it's not a straight line dart. It definitely has sort of a curve to it, and it's going to curve more when it gets to the tail end over here. That's going to give you a much rounder shape and make sure that it's not as pointy. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for both of my fashion fabric pieces and my lining. With my bottoms and my darts pinned into place, I can go ahead and take these over to my machine. For my bottoms, I'm going to sew with what is an overcast stitch, and that's a straight stitch down and then a zigzag and then like a couple straight stitches and then a zigzag. I find that that one gives me the nicest look from the outside of my garment, but it still has the stretchability because that zigzag that's put in every couple of stitches. I prefer to sew my garments on my regular sewing machine first and then go ahead and overlock the edges once that's done. The reason that I sew it on both of the overlocker and my regular machine is because I don't have a ton of threads for my overlocker. So I like the outermost thread to be something that's matching. That's what I'm going to sew on my straight machine. And then when I go to the overlocker, it doesn't matter as much if my thread is matching. It's just in there to help strengthen that seam and make sure that if any of the other stitches pop, there's another layer of protection. So that's what I'm going to do for the bottoms, and then for the darts, I'm just going to sew with a straight stitch, you know, going along the dart, and as I said, curving, and then stopping at the point, leaving extra thread tails so that I can tie them off in the end. Okay, darts have all been sewn and side seams are done up. I've decided I'm going to go ahead and put some foam cups in, not necessarily for support, just because I like that extra layer of security that when the suit gets wet, you know, nothing's going to show through. So I buy these just little sort of flimsy foam cups from Amazon. This one looks a little bit fuzzy because I put it in a suit previously. The suit didn't fit, so I went ahead and unpicked it out. No point in getting rid of a foam cup if I could use it somewhere else. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it in here. I've held up these pieces to myself, and I'm pretty sure that the apex of this dart is right about where my apex is going to be. So I'm just going to work like that. So next up is putting my foam cups in my lining. Okay, now with the cups into the lining, I can go ahead and sort of assemble the top part of the suit. So I want to lay my pieces with the right sides together. And now I'm going to pin along these two long edges, leaving it open both in the top and the bottom. So now I have these pinned on either side. I'm going to go ahead and take this over to my overlocker machine and overlock the edge at the same time as applying my rubber on the seam allowance. And I have to do it with the fashion fabric facing up. That's going to give you the cleanest edge when we finish. So, you know, I've got pins in here. I go really, really slowly with the overlocker. I don't love to use pins with it, but there's really just no way to make sure that I have everything lined up perfectly. So going ahead and sewing overlocking the edge with the elastic at the same time as finishing this edge. Okay, so that is done. This is exactly how you would do a reversible swimsuit as well. And I gotta say, I'm not very good at this technique, but I got there in the end. So I did both of the top pieces as well as the two sort of like straps that I'm gonna use. On these, I just folded them in half and then serged the raw end with the rubber elastic at the same time. So now I'm going to turn my straps to the right way and sort of flatten them out. So I want the seam sitting in the middle so it's not going to really be visible at all. And I'm going to slide it in, and I want the seam side touching my lining and the side where you don't see the seam touching my outer fabric. So I'm just going to go inside the middle of here. Get everything situated in there, and then I can take that over to my machine and just sew with a straight stitch along that upper edge. Okay, with the two straps sewn into place, now I can turn this guy right side out. So now I'm going to take this over to my machine and like top stitch with the zigzag along these edges, making sure I'm keeping the outer fabric rolled around the sort of like curve. And because of the way that the elastic was applied in that other step, that should be fairly easy to do. But that just makes sure that the lining doesn't peek around to the top of it. So now I'm just going to top stitch along both of these edges of the upper bodice. So now that's all been top stitched and it looks pretty good. I think that if I were to do this method again, I would make sure to cut my lining just a little bit smaller, because I think what's going to happen is the lining will bag out just a little bit in the middle because of the way of the turn of cloth. So if I were to do like the reversible method again, I would cut my lining a little smaller so that I didn't have that bagging effect. But so far I think it's looking pretty good. So the next step is going to be gathering along the bottom. I think the pattern is designed to meet exactly in the middle, but that seems a little scandalous to me. So I think I'm going to overlap about 2 inches. So like this, just to give me a little bit more coverage in the front. So I want the gathering to start in by 2 inches and just go from there to that inflection point on the bottom of the suit. So I'm going to gather that up there to get it a little bit more ruched looking. So I ran 2 lines of basting stitches along the edge here, straddling that 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to pull those to gather up, and then I marked the center point on my bathing suit bottom, so I want to gather that up so that it reaches exactly from the center point to the side seam here. So I don't have a bunch to take up, but just a little bit. So I'm going to tie off one end and then pull the other. Okay, that looks pretty good over there. So I can tie this one off. And then once you tie off both ends, then you can sort of adjust the gathers if you need to make it a little bit more even. Okay, so just making sure that the gathers are sitting in the same place on both of these. So now I can take my bottoms and flip it around to the right side. And I'm going to pin my top on, making sure I keep my center point where I said I wanted to overlap, aligning. And then once you have the 2 top pieces pinned onto the bottom, then we can take our lining of the bottom and let's figure this out. Okay, so there's our front. And I want my lining to be inside out, so I have the seam allowances facing out right now, and then I'm going to slide that over top and line up my waist again, making sure I have the front in the front. I'm going to match up my side seams and then pin this guy into place. So now that my waist is fully pinned in, I'm going to go ahead and sew along the entirety of the waist with a stretchy stitch, probably my overcasting stitch. And then I'm going to go ahead and overlock with some rubber elastic just along the back portion. Okay, so I've sewn around the waistline with my regular machine, but in order to do the rubber elastic, again, I want to do it from the fashion side of the fabric. That's going to give me the best finish on the edge. So I flip it the other way around, so now I have the fashion fabric facing out. And I'm only going to apply the elastic in between that sort of the 2 back triangles, just in the center back here. I'm going to cover stitch, or I'm going to overlock all the way around, but the elastic is only going to extend between those 2 back pieces. Okay, now with that done, I can go ahead and flip the suit so it's the right way around. It's looking pretty cool. I'm liking how this looks. So now I'm just going to remove those basting stitches in there that helped keep the gathers. And I'm going to, I think I'm going to top stitch all the way around the waist just to make sure it's staying flat Yeah. Normally I don't love doing a whole lot of top stitching, but I think it'll really help the way that the suit lays. So I'll top stitch with a zigzag stitch all the way around the waistline. So we're getting really close. Sort of the last steps we have to do are just applying elastic to the leg hole edges of there and then inserting our clasp onto the back. So when I'm inserting the clasp onto the back, I'm actually going to put the suit on and just pin it into place where I think it's going to be. Try the suit on, make sure that I have enough space to get this on and off comfortably, and then I can secure it. I made sure that my straps were extra long because I just wanted to make sure that I didn't, if I have too much strap, that's fine, I can always cut it off, but I can't really add more strap on if it's not long enough. So for the elastic along the legs, I'm going to apply it along the edge on the inside of my suit. And then once it's applied on, I can fold it in on itself and zigzag from the top stitching around to secure it into place. So I went ahead and decided to use a cover stitch machine for the finish along the leg hole edges, just because it looks a little bit cleaner in my opinion. So I actually zigzagged the elastic to the wrong side of the fabric and then folded it over and finished with the cover stitch. So the cover stitch gives 2 lines of stitching on the outside, and then obviously it covers the back with a bunch of loopers, but I think it really gives a nice clean finish, especially on swimwear. I kind of wish I had done it for the rest of the edges over here. I had sort of forgotten that I had an aqua thread that matched this pretty well, but you know, it's fine. Next time I can make that change. And then the last step, of course, is to add on the closures in the back. So I'm just going to be using this like clicker. I believe I purchased this one from Tailor Made Shop in the gold colorway, and I think it looks really nice on there. So I've just sort of wonder clipped it in for now, like thread the strap through there, estimated how long I need to be, and then I'm going to go ahead and put the suit on so I can get these figured out exactly how long they need to be. That's one of the reasons why I really love making my own swimwear, is because I can lengthen and shorten this strap so it's going to fit me perfectly and just fit like a glove. But overall, I'm pretty excited with how this turned out. I do like the overlap in the front just because I think it gives me a little bit more coverage to make me feel confident, but it still has that same overall look of the fitted bottom with the sort of like ruched top. So once I get these figured out, I can sew them into place permanently and show you what the finished suit looks like.